Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into something that honestly might sound just a little bit dry at first glance, but it's actually the ultimate key to your future financial freedom. We're going to decode the complex, sometimes kind of intimidating, but incredibly rewarding world of Italian pension funds. We'll look at the legislative frameworks governing them and even touch on the new PEP framework. I'm super excited to guide you through this, because once you actually see the structure behind the system, it completely transforms from this confusing bureaucratic maze into a crystal clear map for building wealth. So let's jump right in. Here's our blueprint for navigating the Italian retirement maze. First up, the Italian pension landscape. Then, open versus closed funds. Number 3, who holds the money? After that, we'll look at Marco's retirement math, and finally wrap it up with taxes, costs, and payouts. Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, the Italian pension landscape, laying the foundation. Right, before we can even talk about where your money goes, we've got to understand the macro environment of the Italian system. And to do that, you absolutely must understand the TFR, or Trattamento di Fine Rapporto. Basically, this is a mandatory 6.91% allocation of your salary. Now, traditionally, this was just set aside as a standard severance package for when you leave a job, but modern legislation totally transformed it. This 6.91% chunk, it is literally the foundational building block of Italian retirement planning. It's the fuel for your supplementary pension. But how does that fuel actually make its way into the engine? Well, that brings us to a brilliantly effective little mechanism called tacit adhesion. Now, I know tacit adhesion sounds like some kind of terrible bureaucratic trap, right? But actually, it's a super powerful automatic wealth-building tool. It's an automatic enrollment default rule, meaning your TFR is automatically directed right into a pension fund unless you actively raise your hand and say, "No, opt me out." By making participation the default, the system essentially leverages human inertia to literally force you to invest in your future. It's just a fantastic example of structural design encouraging long-term financial wellness. Moving right along to Section 2, open versus closed funds, choosing your path. So you're in the system, either actively or, through tacit adhesion. Once your TFR is ready to invest, you basically have two main choices. On one side, we've got closed-end funds. These have a real collective nature. They're usually negotiated between trade unions and employers for very specific categories of workers. And because of this collective bargaining power and their specific management arrangements, they're often considered the better option for voluntary supplementary schemes. But on the flip side, we have open pension funds. Just like the name implies, these are totally accessible to a broader public. Anyone can join, no matter your profession. They're typically set up by banks, insurance companies, or asset management firms, which basically means they operate with entirely different management structures and fee models. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3. Who holds the money? The financial ecosystem. It's a great question, right? Who is actually managing all this wealth? Well, the pension ecosystem isn't just one guy in a suit sitting at a desk. It's a massive system of checks and balances. First, you have the sponsoring entity that sets up the fund. But get this, they don't hold the money. The money is managed by an investment manager who decides which stocks or bonds to buy. But they don't hold the money either. The actual assets are securely held by a completely separate custodian bank. Then, way down the line, an annuity provider steps in to convert that big pile of cash into a monthly paycheck for you. And right there at the center of it all is the member. That's you. This whole separation of powers is designed specifically to protect your capital. And to make absolutely sure all those entities are playing by the rules, there's a strict corporate governance structure in place. The General Assembly is there to approve the major statements. Then the Board of Directors provides high-level management oversight. You've got the Board of Auditors acting like the internal police, ensuring everything is financially sound. And finally, the General Manager, who runs the day-to-day operations. The main takeaway here, your money is surrounded by layers and layers of oversight, auditing, and management. Let's bring this down to earth in Section 4. Marco's retirement math, building a future. All right, it's time to ground all these abstract legislative rules in a real human story. I want you to ask yourself, what does all this oversight, these funds, and this TFR percentage actually look like in real life? How does it translate into a comfortable retirement? Well, let me introduce you to Marco. Marco is 35 years old, and he decides to make a voluntary contribution to his pension fund of just €100 a month. I absolutely love this number because it's so manageable, right? It's a small, consistent starting point for his financial future. It's not a fortune by any means, but as we're about to see, time is the real magic ingredient here.
Let's just walk through Marco's timeline. In year 1, he starts that €100 a month habit. Fast forward to year 15, and the principle of capitalization is aggressively working in his favor. This means his returns are literally generating their own returns. The model here assumes a pretty conservative 3% average return, just relying on standard market performance. But by year 30, when Marco reaches age 65, the fund reaches maturity. And because of the sheer power of compounding interest over 3 decades, those modest €100 contributions have completely snowballed into a significant supplementary retirement nest egg.
And the best part? When Marco finally hits 65, he has incredible flexibility. Depending on the specific rules of his fund, he isn't just locked into one single path. He could take a lump sum, basically grabbing a large portion of the cash all at once. Or he could choose an annuity, which is a guaranteed steady stream of income for the rest of his life. Or, if he wants, he can even opt for a customized combination of both. He gets to tailor the final payout to whatever his life requires at that exact moment.
And now, the moment of truth. Section 5. Taxes, costs, and payouts. The fiscal payoff. We are finally going to answer exactly why this matters so deeply to your wallet right now, and not just 30 years down the line. But before we get to the tax perks, we have to talk about fees, because high fees can absolutely destroy capitalization. That's exactly why the legislation mandates the Synthetic Cost Indicator, or SCI. Honestly, this is your most powerful tool as an investor. It's a legally required, completely transparent metric that documents exactly what a fund is costing you. Funds are literally forced to display this clearly on their websites. It ensures that sneaky management fees aren't quietly eating away at Marco's 3% returns. You will always know exactly what you're paying for. Okay, so once you've secured low costs using the SCI, the system basically showers you with fiscal benefits. Let's break this down step by step. Step 1 is upfront tax deductions. Your voluntary contributions, up to a certain legislative limit of course, are fully deductible from your taxable income today. Step 2 is the deferral of taxation. You aren't taxed on that money while it just sits in the fund growing. And Step 3, special taxes on returns. The annual returns the fund generates are actually taxed at a preferential, much lower rate compared to standard financial investments. Basically, the system is heavily incentivizing you to contribute by actively lowering your current tax burden. It's a win-win.
And this brings us to what is arguably the ultimate perk. When you finally take the money out at retirement, there's a base tax rate applied. But, and this is crucial, after you have been in the fund for 15 years, that tax rate actually starts to drop for every single additional year you stay invested, eventually hitting a maximum rate reduction. So, the longer you let your money sit in the system, the less the government takes when you finally withdraw it. It perfectly aligns your long-term financial health with massive, massive tax savings.
So we've covered the landscape, the funds, the ecosystem, the math, and the taxes. But I really want to leave you with this one thought. The true power of the pension system isn't just in the rules, but in the capitalization of early, consistent habits. The legislative framework is really just the engine. Your contributions are the fuel. So I have to ask you, are you letting your TFR and your own contributions actively work for you? Or is that potential wealth just sitting there, losing to inflation? Go check your status, look up that synthetic cost indicator, and take control of your financial future today. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.